When Elon Musk got on his late-night flight to Boston, he just wanted to sleep. He pulled his baseball cap down low and found his first-class seat, thinking about his morning meeting with MIT professors. But then he froze. 3 rows behind him sat Justine, his ex-wife, the woman he had loved and lost years ago because work always came first. She was holding a little boy who looked about 2 years old. Elon's heart stopped beating. The child had thick, dark hair that stuck up in the back, just like Elon's did as a kid. Same bright eyes, same stubborn chin, same everything. It was like looking at a photo of himself from 36 years ago. The little boy started coughing, a sick, scary sound. Justine looked worried and tired. Other passengers stared, but Elon could only think about one thing. This child looked exactly like him. His hands shook. His mind raced. Nothing made sense. Who was this mystery child who could be his twin? And what secret was Justine hiding that would turn Elon's world upside down? Before we dive into this amazing story about family love and life-changing surprises, make sure to hit that like button and comment where you're watching from. Now let's see what happens when Elon decides he absolutely has to know the truth. Elon Musk pulled his baseball cap down low as he hurried through the busy LAX airport. It was almost 11 at night, and he was tired. His mind raced with thoughts about SpaceX rockets and Tesla cars. He had an important meeting in Boston tomorrow morning with some very smart people from MIT. The airport was still crowded, even this late. People rushed past him with their rolling bags, talking on phones and checking their watches. Elon kept his head down. He didn't want anyone to recognize him tonight. He just wanted to get on the plane, sleep during the flight, and be ready for his big meeting. Flight 47 to Boston is now boarding first class, came the announcement over the speakers. Perfect timing. Elon walked to the gate and showed his ticket to the flight attendant. She smiled at him, but didn't seem to know who he was. Good. Sometimes it was nice to just be a regular person getting on a plane. He found his seat, 2A, right up front in first class. The seat was big and comfortable, with plenty of room for his long legs. Elon put his carry-on bag in the overhead bin and sat down. He pulled out his phone to check one last email about tomorrow's meeting. The plane was filling up with other passengers. Business people in suits, families going on vacation, college students with big backpacks. Elon watched them find their seats and get settled. Flying had become so normal for him that he barely noticed other people anymore. But then he saw her. 3 rows behind him, settling into seat 5B, was a woman with long dark hair. She wore a simple blue dress and moved with a grace that seemed familiar. Very familiar. Elon's heart stopped. It was Justine, his ex-wife. The woman he had loved and married and lost because he worked too much and didn't know how to show his feelings. He hadn't seen her in almost 2 years. But Justine wasn't alone. In her arms she held a little boy who looked about 2 years old. The child had thick, dark hair that stuck up in the back, just like Elon's did when he was little. The boy had bright, curious eyes and a small, determined chin. Elon felt like someone had dumped ice water over his head. The little boy looked exactly like him. Exactly like him. The same hair that wouldn't stay flat, no matter how much you tried to comb it down. The same eyes that seemed to take in everything around them. The same stubborn way of holding his head when he was thinking about something. Elon gripped the armrests of his seat so hard his knuckles turned white. His hands were shaking. His heart was beating so fast he thought it might jump right out of his chest. Who was this child? Justine had remarried after their divorce. He knew that from the papers his lawyer had sent him. But she had married a writer, a quiet man who looked nothing like Elon. So why did this little boy look like he could be Elon's own son? Sir, would you like something to drink? The flight attendant was standing next to his seat, looking at him with concern. Elon realized he must look terrible. His face was probably white as snow. "Water," he managed to whisper. "Just water, please." She brought him a bottle of water, and Elon drank it quickly. The cold water helped a little, but his mind was still spinning like a tornado. Had Justine cheated on her new husband? Had she somehow had another baby with someone who looked just like Elon? That didn't make sense. Justine wasn't the type of person to cheat on anyone. Maybe the little boy wasn't hers. Maybe she was babysitting for a friend. But no, the way she held him was too natural, too loving. This was definitely her child. Elon turned around in his seat, trying to get another look without being obvious. The little boy was playing with wooden blocks, building a tower just like Elon used to do when he was small. When the tower fell down, the boy didn't cry or get upset. He just started building again, his little face serious and focused. That's exactly what I would have done, Elon thought. That's exactly how I looked when I was his age. He remembered old pictures his mother had shown him. Pictures of himself as a toddler, building with blocks and Legos, always making something, always thinking. This little boy had the same expression, the same way of moving his hands, the same everything. It was like looking at himself 38 years ago. The plane started moving away from the gate. Through his window, Elon could see the lights of Los Angeles getting smaller and smaller as they taxied toward the runway. He should be thinking about his meeting tomorrow. He should be reviewing his notes about the new rocket engine design. He should be planning what he would say to the MIT professors. Instead, all he could think about was the mystery child sitting 3 rows behind him. Justine looked tired. More tired than he remembered her ever looking, even during the worst days of their marriage. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before. She kept checking the little boy's forehead with the back of her hand, like she was worried about a fever. The boy coughed a few times. It was a harsh, rattling cough that didn't sound good. Justine frowned and hugged him closer to her chest. Was the child sick? Is that why they were flying to Boston? Boston had some of the best children's hospitals in the world. Maybe that's where they were going. But why would Justine take another woman's sick child to the hospital? Unless the child was hers. But if the child was hers and he looked so much like Elon, then that could only mean one thing. And that one thing made Elon's head spin so fast he felt dizzy. He forced himself to take deep breaths, in and out, in and out. Like the meditation teacher he had hired last year had taught him, though he had never needed it more than right now. The plane was picking up speed on the runway now. Soon they would be in the air, flying through the dark night sky toward Boston, toward answers that Elon wasn't sure he was ready to hear. But he had to know. He had to find out who this little boy was and why he looked like Elon's twin. Even if the truth changed everything. The plane lifted off into the dark night sky, and Elon felt his stomach drop. Not from the flying, but from the fear of what he might learn tonight. He couldn't stop himself from turning around again. The little boy was still playing with his blocks, but now Elon could see him even more clearly. A resemblance was impossible to ignore. It was like someone had taken a picture of Elon as a toddler and brought it to life. The boy had the same cowlick that stuck up no matter what you did to it. Elon remembered his mother trying to wet it down with water every morning before school. It never worked. The hair always popped back up like a spring. This little boy had that exact same stubborn piece of hair. When the boy concentrated on building his tower, he tilted his head to the left, just like Elon did when he was thinking hard about a problem. When he picked up a block, he turned it around in his small hands, examining it from every angle before deciding where to place it. That's exactly what I do, Elon thought with amazement. Even now, when I'm designing rockets, I turn the parts around in my hands just like that. The boy knocked down his tower and immediately started building again. No frustration, no giving up, just pure determination to make it work better the next time. That was how Elon had built his first computer program at age 12. That was how he had started his first company. That was how he approached every challenge in his life. But how could a child who wasn't his son have all these same traits? Elon forced himself to look at Justine instead of the boy. She looked so different from the last time he had seen her. Older, yes, but also sadder. There were worry lines around her eyes that made her look like she hadn't slept well in months. She wore no wedding ring. That surprised him. He thought she had remarried a few years ago. Maybe they were divorced now too. Or maybe she just didn't wear her ring when she traveled. Justine was singing softly to the little boy. It was a lullaby that Elon recognized immediately. She used to sing it to their twins, Griffin and Xavier, when they were babies. The same gentle melody, the same sweet voice that had once sung their children to sleep every night. The memory hit Elon like a punch to the stomach. He remembered holding Griffin while Justine sang to Xavier. He remembered feeling like the luckiest man in the world to have such a perfect family. Before everything fell apart, before he started working 20-hour days and forgetting to come home for dinner, before Justine stopped trying to wait up for him. But this wasn't Griffin or Xavier that Justine was singing to now. This was a different child altogether. A child who looked like their lost baby Nevada might have looked if he had lived to be 2 years old. Nevada, their first son, who died when he was only 10 weeks old. The baby whose death had broken both their hearts and started the slow destruction of their marriage. They had never talked about how much Nevada looked like Elon, because it hurt too much. But he had. Even as a tiny baby, Nevada had Elon's eyes and his stubborn chin. Just like this little boy. Stop it, Elon told himself firmly. You're seeing things that aren't there because you miss Nevada. This child just happens to have dark hair and curious eyes. Lots of kids look like that. But even as he thought it, he knew it wasn't true. This wasn't just any child with dark hair. This was a child who could have been his twin brother at the same age. The boy started coughing again. It was a dry, harsh sound that made both Elon and Justine wince. The cough sounded wrong, like the boy was really sick, not just fighting off a little cold. Justine pulled a small bottle of medicine from her purse and gave the boy a tiny spoonful. He made a face at the taste but swallowed it like a good patient. Like he was used to taking medicine. He's been sick for a while, Elon realized. That's why Justine looked so worried and tired. She's been taking care of a sick child. Other passengers were starting to look their way. A few people seemed annoyed by the coughing. One man in a business suit shook his head and put on headphones. A woman across the aisle frowned and moved to an empty seat farther away. Elon felt angry at those people. Couldn't they see that Justine was doing her best? Couldn't they tell that this little boy was sick and needed help? Not dirty look. He unbuckled his seatbelt. His heart was pounding again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from something else. Something that felt like the pull of a magnet, drawing him toward the child who looked so much like him. He had to know the truth. He had to talk to Justine and find out who this boy was. Even if it meant facing painful memories, even if it meant reopening old wounds that had never really healed, even if it changed everything he thought he knew about his life. Elon stood up and started walking down the narrow airplane aisle. Each step felt heavy, like he was walking through water. Other passengers looked up at him as he passed, but he barely saw them. All he could see was Justine, holding a child who looked exactly like him, singing the lullaby she used to sing to their babies long ago. When he reached row 5, he stopped and cleared his throat softly. Justine? She looked up, and her eyes went wide with surprise. For a moment, neither of them said anything. They just stared at each other across the years of hurt and silence that had grown between them. The little boy stopped coughing and looked up at Elon with bright, intelligent eyes. Eyes that seemed to recognize something familiar, even though they had never met before. "Elon," Justine whispered, I didn't know you were on this flight." Her voice was exactly the same. Soft and musical, with just a hint of the accent she had picked up from living in different countries as a child. Hearing it again made Elon feel like he was falling through time, back to when they were young and in love and thought they could conquer the world together. "Is he?" Elon started to ask, but the words stuck in his throat like glue. The question hung in the air between them, unfinished but understood. The most important question in the world, and Elon was too scared to say it out loud. The little boy reached up toward Elon with one small hand, his fingers grasping at the space between them, like he wanted to touch this tall stranger who looked so familiar, like he somehow knew they belonged together. The little boy's hand stayed stretched toward Elon, his tiny fingers opening and closing like he was trying to catch something in the air. His eyes never left Elon's face, studying him with the intense curiosity that only small children possess. "This is Tommy," Justine said quietly, her voice careful and measured. She shifted the boy in her arms, but he kept reaching for Elon. "Tommy, say hello." "Hi," Tommy whispered, his voice soft and sweet. Then he coughed again, that harsh sound that made Elon's chest tighten with worry. "Hello, Tommy," Elon managed to say, though his throat felt dry as sand. Up close, the resemblance was even more shocking. Tommy had the same thick eyelashes that Elon's mother always said were wasted on a boy, the same small scar on his chin that Elon had gotten from falling off his bike when he was 3. Wait, that couldn't be right. Elon looked closer. Tommy did have a tiny scar in the exact same place, but scars weren't genetic. Children couldn't inherit their father's childhood accidents. Unless this child really was. "May I sit down?" Elon asked, gesturing to the empty seat next to Justine. She nodded and slid over to make room by the window. As Elon settled into the middle seat, Tommy immediately turned his body toward him, still reaching with those small, persistent hands. "He's not usually this friendly with strangers," Justine said, and there was something in her voice that Elon couldn't quite identify. Sadness. Maybe. Or maybe I don't feel like a stranger to him, Elon said softly. Their eyes met over Tommy's head, and for a moment the years of anger and hurt seemed to disappear. They were just two people who had once loved each other very much, looking at a child who needed them both. Tommy's cough got worse. The dry, rattling sound made other passengers turn to look. A flight attendant hurried over, her face creased with concern. "Is everything okay here?" she asked. "Does the little one need medical attention?" "He has a condition," Justine explained, pulling a folder of papers from her bag. "We're flying to Boston Children's Hospital to see a specialist. I have his medical records if you need to see them." The flight attendant looked through the papers quickly. "Poor little guy," she said gently. "Is there anything we can do to make him more comfortable? Extra pillows? Some juice?" "Apple juice would be wonderful," Justine said gratefully. "And maybe some ice chips if you have them." The cold helps with his throat. As the flight attendant walked away, Tommy's coughing fit got even worse. His small body shook with each cough, and his breathing became labored. Justine looked panicked. "Shh, baby," she whispered, rubbing his back in gentle circles. "It's okay. We're almost there. Just a few more hours and we'll see Dr. Martinez." Without thinking, Elon reached into his carry-on bag. He always traveled with small gadgets and toys that he used to help him think through engineering problems. His fingers found what he was looking for, a small, smooth piece of metal that he used as a worry stone. "Tommy," he said quietly, holding up the shiny object. "Look at this." Tommy's coughing slowed as his attention focused on the metal piece. Elon made it dance between his fingers, catching the aeroplane's dim lights and throwing tiny reflections on the seat in front of them. "It's like a little star," Elon explained, his voice calm and soothing. "See how it sparkles? That's what real stars look like when you see them from a rocket ship." "Rocket?" Tommy asked, his voice hoarse but curious. The coughing had stopped completely. "Yes, rockets. Big machines that fly to space. Would you like to hear about them?" Tommy nodded eagerly, his breathing already becoming easier. Elon began telling him about rockets and space and all the wonderful things that waited among the stars. As he talked, he moved the metal piece in patterns that matched his words, creating a little light show just for Tommy. The child was completely mesmerized. His eyes followed every movement, and his breathing became deep and regular. Within minutes, the harsh coughing had stopped entirely. "How did you do that?" Justine asked in amazement. "I've been trying to calm his cough for weeks, and nothing works that quickly. Sometimes distraction is the best medicine," Elon said. But he was thinking something else entirely. Tommy had responded to him like he was a familiar voice, a trusted person. The way a child responds to family. "You're good with him," Justine observed, and there was wonder in her voice. "He's been so scared around new people since—" She stopped herself before finishing the sentence. "Since what?" Elon asked gently. Justine looked down at Tommy, who was now playing happily with the metal piece, making his own little light patterns. "Since his father died," she said so quietly that Elon almost didn't hear her. The words hit Elon like a physical blow. Tommy's father was dead. This beautiful, bright little boy, who looked so much like him, was an orphan. "I'm so sorry," Elon said, and he meant it with every part of his heart. "When did it happen?" 4 months ago, Justine replied, her voice thick with unshed tears. "It was sudden. Tommy doesn't really understand yet. He still asks for Daddy sometimes." Elon felt tears burning behind his own eyes. No child should have to lose a parent so young. No child should have to ask for someone who would never come home again. "What about his mother?" Elon asked carefully. "She couldn't handle it," Justine said simply. "After the funeral, she signed custody over to me and moved across the country. She said she was too young, too scared. So now it's just me and Tommy." The pieces were starting to come together in Elon's mind, but they still didn't make complete sense. Why would Justine have custody of a child who wasn't hers, unless— "Justine," he said slowly, "whose son is Tommy?" She looked at him with eyes full of old pain and new hope. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "He's my brother Damien's son," she said. "And Elon, Damien looked exactly like you." The words hung in the air like smoke. Elon felt his world tilt sideways as understanding crashed over him like a giant wave. Damien, Justine's younger brother, the artistic one who used to build amazing sculptures from old car parts and broken computers. Elon remembered him as a skinny teenager with messy hair and paint under his fingernails. But that was 15 years ago. Elon hadn't seen Damien since the divorce. He had stopped going to family gatherings, stopped being part of Justine's world. He had no idea what Damien looked like as an adult. "Damien grew up to look like me?" Elon asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Almost exactly," Justine said sadly. "When Tommy was born, the nurses in the hospital kept asking if you were the father. The resemblance was that strong." Elon stared down at Tommy, who was still playing with the metal piece, completely unaware of the adult conversation happening around him. Everything made sense now. The cowlick, the chin, the way he tilted his head when concentrating. Tommy looked like Elon because his father had looked like Elon. "Where is Damien now?" Elon asked, though part of him already knew the answer from the sadness in Justine's eyes. "He died 4 months ago," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Drug overdose." The words hit Elon like a punch to the stomach. He remembered teenage Damien laughing at family dinners, showing everyone his latest art project, full of life and creativity and hope. "I'm so sorry," Elon said, and he truly meant it. "I had no idea he was struggling. He'd been clean for 2 years, Justine explained, wiping away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "He got his life together when Tommy was born. Found a job, got an apartment, was being a really good father. But then Tommy got sick, and the medical bills started piling up, and the stress." She didn't need to finish. Elon understood. The pressure had become too much, and Damien had fallen back into old habits. It was a story that happened to too many people, too many families. "What about Tommy's mother?" Elon asked gently. "Sarah. She was only 19 when Tommy was born. She loved Damien, but she was young and scared. After he died, she tried to take care of Tommy by herself. But when he got really sick," Justine shrugged helplessly. "She couldn't handle it. She signed over custody to me and moved back to Oregon to live with her parents." Elon looked at Tommy again. This beautiful, bright little boy had lost both his parents, his father to addiction, his mother to fear, and now he was sick with something serious enough to require specialists in Boston. "What's wrong with him?" Elon asked. "Medically, I mean. The doctors aren't sure yet," Justine said, running her fingers through Tommy's soft hair. "He keeps getting infections, colds that turn into pneumonia, ear infections that won't heal, fevers that come and go. His immune system isn't working right." Tommy coughed again, as if to prove her point. The sound was getting worse, and Elon could see the worry lines deepening around Justine's eyes. "That's why we're going to Boston," she continued. "Dr. Martinez at Children's Hospital thinks she might know what's wrong. She wants to run some special tests. And if she's right, if she figures out what's causing the infections, then maybe Tommy can get better. Maybe he can be a normal, healthy little boy instead of spending half his life in doctors' offices and hospitals." Elon felt something stirring in his chest. A familiar feeling that he got when he saw a problem that needed solving. But this wasn't about building rockets or electric cars. This was about a sick child who looked like his own reflection. "What can I do?" he asked. "How can I help?" Justine looked surprised. "Elon, you don't owe us anything. Tommy isn't your responsibility." "Maybe not," Elon said, watching Tommy stack imaginary blocks in the air with his small hands. "But he's yours, and that makes him important to me." The honesty of his words surprised even him. Despite everything that had gone wrong between them, despite years of silence and hurt feelings, Elon still cared about Justine. More than cared. Seeing her struggling alone with a sick child made him want to fix everything, the way he always did. "The medical bills must be enormous," he said. "I'm managing," Justine replied, but Elon could hear the exhaustion in her voice. Managing meant she was probably using up her savings, maybe going into debt, definitely worrying about money on top of everything else. "You shouldn't have to manage alone," Elon said firmly. "Whatever Tommy needs, the best doctors, experimental treatments, anything, I want to help pay for it." "Why?" Justine asked, studying his face. "Really, why? You barely knew Damien as an adult. You've never met Tommy before tonight. Why would you want to get involved in our problems?" It was a fair question, and Elon wasn't sure he had a good answer. Or at least, not an answer he was ready to say out loud. The truth was, looking at Tommy felt like looking at all the children he might have had with Justine if he had been a better husband. If he had been home more, worked less, paid attention to what really mattered. Tommy represented all the chances he had missed, All the family moments he had traded for business meetings. "Because you were the best thing that ever happened to me," Elon said quietly. "And because I was too stupid and too scared to fight for our family when I had the chance. Maybe this is my chance to do better." Justine's eyes filled with tears. "Elon, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I'm not trying to win you back or complicate your life. I just want to help. Let me help." Tommy looked up at both of them, sensing the emotion in their voices even if he couldn't understand the words. He reached out and patted Elon's hand with his tiny palm, then did the same to Jess. "Family," he said clearly, the first complete word he had spoken since Elon sat down. Both adults stared at him in surprise. "Did he just say family?" Elon asked. "He did," Justine whispered, fresh tears streaming down her face. "He's never said that word before." Tommy smiled at both of them, proud of his new word. Then he coughed again, and the spell was broken. But something had changed. Something important had been said, even by a 2-year-old who didn't understand the complicated adult world around him. Maybe Tommy was right. Maybe, despite everything, they were still family. The word hung between them like a bridge neither had dared to cross in years. Tommy, unaware of the weight of what he had said, went back to playing with Elon's metal piece, making soft humming sounds as he turned it in his small hands. "He's never said that word before," Justine repeated, her voice full of wonder. "Not even about Damien. The doctors said he might be slow to talk because of all the stress. But he knew to say it now," Elon finished softly. "He knew we belonged together somehow." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Tommy play. The harsh coughing had stopped, and his breathing seemed easier. The simple act of being between two caring adults seemed to calm him in a way that medicine could. "Tell me about Nevada," Justine said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. Elon's breath caught in his throat. They never talked about Nevada. Not since the funeral, not during the divorce, not ever. It was too painful, too raw, even after all these years. "What about him?" Elon managed to ask. "Do you still think about him, dream about him?" "Every day," Elon admitted, the truth spilling out before he could stop it. "I see him in Griffin and Xavier. I wonder what he would have looked like at their age, what he would have been interested in, whether he would have wanted to build rockets, or paint pictures, or play music." Justine nodded, tears flowing freely now. "I dream about him sometimes. I see him as a toddler, running around the backyard, laughing. In my dreams he looks exactly like Tommy." The admission hung in the air between them. They had both been thinking it, but neither had been brave enough to say it out loud. Tommy looked like the son they had lost, the baby whose death had started the slow destruction of their marriage. "I used to blame myself," Elon said quietly. "I thought if I had been home more, if I had paid more attention, maybe I would have noticed something was wrong. Maybe I could have saved him." "There was nothing to notice," Justine said firmly. "The doctors told us that 100 times SIDS happens to healthy babies from good families. It wasn't anyone's fault, but I should have been there more anyway," Elon continued. "For you, for Griffin and Xavier. After Nevada died, instead of staying home to grieve with you, I threw myself into work even harder. I thought if I could just build something important enough, make enough money, somehow I could protect everyone from ever hurting like that again. And I thought if I could just hold tight enough to what we had left, I could keep it from slipping away too." Justine replied, "But you can't hold on to someone who's already running away." Tommy coughed softly, drawing their attention back to the present. He had dropped the metal piece and was rubbing his eyes with tiny fists, the way very young children do when they're getting tired. "Sleepy?" Justine asked, gathering him closer. "Story," Tommy said hopefully, looking between the two adults. "What kind of story would you like?" Elon asks, surprising himself by responding before Justine could. Rocket story, Tommy said immediately, his eyes brightening despite his tiredness. So Elon told him a story about a little rocket that wanted to visit all the planets in the solar system. As he talked, he made gestures with his hands, showing how the rocket would fly past Mars and Jupiter and Saturn. Tommy's eyes followed every movement, completely captivated. And the rocket's favorite planet was Earth, Elon concluded, because that's where all the people it loved were waiting. Like family, Tommy said sleepily, and then his eyes drifted closed. Within minutes, he was fast asleep in Justine's arms, his breathing deep and peaceful. The worry lines around Justine's eyes softened as she watched him sleep. "You're good at that," she said quietly. "The storytelling. I remember you used to make up bedtime stories for Griffin and Xavier about robots and spaceships. I remember you telling them fairy tales about brave princesses and magical kingdoms." Elon replied, "You always made the princesses scientists or inventors. You said girls needed to know they could save themselves." "I still believe that," Justine said with a small smile. "Though sometimes it's nice to know you don't have to save yourself alone." They fell into another comfortable silence, this one deeper than the first. Around them, the airplane hummed through the night sky, carrying them toward Boston and toward answers they both hoped would be good ones. "Can I ask you something?" Elon said eventually. "Of course. Why didn't you call me when Damien died? Or when Tommy got sick? Why handle all of this by yourself?" Justine was quiet for so long that Elon thought she might not answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was sad but honest. "Because I was afraid you would try to fix everything," she said. "And I was afraid that once you fixed it, you would disappear again. Tommy doesn't need another person who leaves when things get complicated." The words stung because they were true. How many times had Elon swooped in to solve a problem with money or technology, then moved on to the next crisis without staying to see the human impact of his solutions? "I don't want to disappear," he said. "I want to be here. Really here, not just sending checks or making phone calls to doctors. I want to be part of Tommy's life, part of your life, if you'll let me." "What about Tesla, SpaceX? Your mission to save humanity?" Elon looked down at Tommy's sleeping face, so peaceful and trusting. "Maybe saving humanity starts with saving one family at a time. Maybe I've been thinking about it backwards all along." "That's a beautiful thought, Elon, but thoughts and actions are different things. I can't build Tommy's life around what you think you want to do. I have to build it around what I know you'll actually do." The challenge in her words was clear, and Elon knew he had earned every bit of her skepticism. But looking at this sleeping child who looked so much like the son they had lost, he felt something shift inside him, a clarity he hadn't experienced in years. "Then let me show you," he said. "Not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, but with small things, daily things. Let me prove that I can be the man Tommy thinks I am when he looks at me." "And what kind of man is that?" Elon thought about Tommy reaching for him, calling them family, falling asleep to the sound of his voice telling stories about rockets that always came home. "The kind who stays," he said simply. The plane suddenly shook hard, throwing everyone forward in their seats. Tommy woke up crying. Not the soft whimper of a sleepy child, but the sharp wail of someone in pain. His face was hot to the touch, and his breathing came in quick, shallow gasps. "His fever's spiking," Justine said, panic creeping into her voice. She felt his forehead with the back of her hand. "He's burning up." Other passengers turned to stare as Tommy's cries grew louder. A businessman in the seat across from them looked annoyed and shook his head. An elderly woman frowned and moved to another row. Elon felt anger flash through him at their lack of compassion. "Flight attendant." Elon called out, his voice sharp with authority that made heads turn. "We need help here." A young flight attendant rushed over, her face immediately showing concern when she saw Tommy's condition. "What's wrong?" "He has a fever and he's having trouble breathing," Justine explained quickly, trying to keep her voice calm even though her hands were shaking. "We're flying to Boston Children's Hospital. He has a medical condition." "Let me get the senior attendant," the young woman said, hurrying away. Within seconds, an older flight attendant appeared, along with a woman from business class who had overheard the commotion. "I'm Dr. Sarah Kim," the woman said, kneeling down beside their row. "I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner. May I take a look at him?" "Please," Justine said gratefully, shifting Tommy so Dr. Kim could examine him. The doctor's hands were gentle but quick as she checked Tommy's breathing, felt his pulse, and looked in his throat with a small flashlight from her purse. Her face was serious but calm. "His breathing is compromised and his fever is very high," she said quietly to the adults. "We need to get his temperature down immediately. Do you have any children's fever reducer with you?" "In my bag," Justine said, fumbling through her purse with trembling fingers. Elon reached into his own carry-on bag, remembering something he had packed for his meeting. "Would this help?" he asked, pulling out what looked like a small silver device the size of a deck of cards. Dr. Kim examined it with surprise. "Is this a personal cooling unit? I designed it for overheating computer processors," Elon explained. "But it creates a controlled cooling effect. The temperature can be adjusted, and it's completely safe for skin contact." "That's actually brilliant," Dr. Kim said, taking the device. "We can use this on his forehead and the back of his neck while the medicine takes effect." As they worked together to make Tommy more comfortable, something remarkable happened. Elon found himself talking to the little boy in a calm, soothing voice, telling him stories about brave astronauts who never gave up, even when their spaceships had problems. "You're like an astronaut, Tommy," Elon said softly, holding one of the boy's small hands while Dr. Kim applied the cooling device. "Astronauts are very brave when things get scary. They breathe slowly and think about all the people who love them." Tommy's eyes focused on Elon's face, and gradually his breathing began to slow down. The harsh crying faded to quiet whimpers, then to deep, shaky breaths. "He's responding to your voice," Dr. Kim observed with amazement. "His vital signs are stabilizing. Is that unusual?" Elon asked. "Very," the doctor replied. "Sick children this age usually only calm down for their parents or primary caregivers. He trusts you completely." Justine watched this exchange with an expression Elon couldn't quite read. There was gratitude there, and relief, but also something deeper, something that looked almost like recognition. "How much longer until we land?" she asked the flight attendant. "About 90 minutes," came the reply. "He should be stable until then," Dr. Kim said, checking Tommy's temperature again. "The fever is coming down and his breathing is much better, but he definitely needs to get to that hospital as soon as possible." As Dr. Kim returned to her seat and the flight attendants went back to their duties, Elon and Justine settled into a quiet routine of care. They took turns holding Tommy, monitoring his breathing, keeping him comfortable with the cooling device. "Thank you," Justine said during a moment when Tommy was sleeping peacefully again. "For the device, for staying calm, for knowing exactly what to say to him." "I didn't know what I was doing," Elon admitted. "I just knew I couldn't stand to see him suffering." "That's what being a parent is," Justine said softly. "Most of the time you don't know what you're doing. You just love them so much that you figure it out as you go along." "Is that what this is?" Elon asked, looking down at Tommy's sleeping face. "Am I becoming a parent to him?" "I think," Justine said carefully, "that you already are one. Maybe you have been since the moment you saw him and your first instinct was to protect him." The words hit Elon with unexpected force. He had been a father to 5 children, but he had never felt this instant protective connection before. With his other kids, love had grown slowly, built through shared experiences and time. With Tommy, it had been immediate and complete, like flipping a switch. "How long has he been sick?" Elon asked. 3 months of constant infections," Justine replied, exhaustion heavy in her voice. "It started as just a cold that wouldn't go away, then ear infections, then pneumonia twice. The doctors in Portland ran every test they could think of, but nothing helped." "What does Dr. Martinez think it is?" "She thinks it might be a primary immune deficiency, something genetic that makes it hard for his body to fight off infections. If she's right, there are treatments that could help him live a normal life. And if she's wrong..." Justine was quiet for a long moment. "If she's wrong, we keep looking. We try everything. We never give up." "We," Elon repeated. "You said we." "I meant..." Justine started, then stopped. "I don't know what I meant." "I do," Elon said quietly. "You meant that we're in this together now. That whatever happens with Tommy, we face it as a team." "Are we?" she asked, her voice vulnerable in a way that reminded him of the young woman he had fallen in love with 20 years ago. "Are we really a team again?" Elon looked around the aeroplane cabin. 12 hours ago, he had been thinking about rocket engines and production schedules. Now he was sitting next to his ex-wife, caring for a sick child who felt like his own son, using an invention designed for computers to bring down a toddler's fever. His phone had been buzzing with urgent messages for the past hour, but he hadn't even looked at it. For the first time in years, there was something more important than work. "Yes," he said with certainty. "We're a team." Tommy stirred in his sleep and reached out, somehow finding both their hands and pulling them together. His small fingers wrapped around their joined hands like he was making sure they stayed connected. "He knows," Justine whispered, looking down at their linked hands. "Somehow he knows we belong together." As the plane continued through the night sky toward Boston, toward doctors and tests and hopefully answers, Elon felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Not the satisfaction of solving a technical problem or the thrill of a successful launch, but something deeper and more lasting. He felt like he was exactly where he belonged. The rest of the flight passed quietly. Tommy's fever stayed down thanks to the medicine and Elon's cooling device. His breathing remained steady and peaceful as he slept between them, one small hand holding Elon's finger and the other resting on Justine's arm. Other passengers had stopped staring. The flight attendants checked on them regularly, bringing extra blankets and juice boxes. Dr. Kim stopped by twice to make sure Tommy was still stable. Each time she shook her head in amazement at how calm he seemed with Elon nearby. "I've been a pediatric nurse for 20 years, she told them during her second visit. "I've never seen a child respond so quickly to someone who isn't family." "Maybe he is family," Elon said quietly, surprising himself with the words. Dr. Kim smiled knowingly. "Maybe he is." As dawn began to break outside the airplane windows, painting the clouds in soft shades of pink and gold, Tommy woke up naturally. No crying this time, no panic. He simply opened his eyes and looked around with quiet curiosity. "Good morning, little astronaut," Elon said softly. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Tommy said, and his voice did sound stronger. The harsh cough from the night before had faded to an occasional soft clearing of his throat. "Are you hungry?" Justine asked, brushing his hair away from his forehead. "The nice flight attendant brought you some crackers and apple juice." Tommy nodded and sat up carefully in Justine's lap. As he nibbled on crackers, he kept looking back and forth between the two adults, as if checking to make sure they were both still there. "Tell me about rockets again," he said to Elon between bites. So Elon did. He told Tommy about how rockets worked, using simple words that a 2-year-old could understand. He explained about fuel and engines and how rockets could carry people to the space station that orbited high above the Earth. Space station? Tommy asked, his eyes wide. It's like a house in space, Elon explained. Astronauts live there for months at a time, doing experiments and taking pictures of Earth. Can I go there? Elon looked at Justine, who nodded with a small smile. Maybe someday, he said. When you're all grown up and feeling better. But first, we need to make sure you're healthy and strong. Like superhero strong? Tommy asked hopefully. Exactly like superhero strong, Elon confirmed. As Tommy finished his crackers, Justine pulled out a small notebook and pen from her purse. I should write down everything that happened last night, she explained. Dr. Martinez will want to know about the fever spike and how quickly you responded to Elon. Elon watched her write, remembering how she used to take notes during their children's doctor appointments years ago. She had always been organized, thorough, the one who remembered important details when he was distracted by work calls. Do you still write? He asked. Stories, I mean. Not just medical notes. Sometimes, Justine said, not looking up from her notebook. Mostly children's books now, stories about brave kids who overcome difficult things. Have you published any? A few. Nothing famous, but they sell okay. Tommy likes the one about the little bear who gets lost in the forest, but finds his way home by following the stars. Tommy perked up at the mention of a story about stars. Read it? He asked hopefully. I don't have that book with me, sweetie, Justine said. But maybe Elon could tell you a story about stars. So Elon found himself making up a story about a young explorer who built a special telescope that could see all the way to distant planets. As he talked, he noticed Tommy's breathing was completely normal now, his color was good, and his eyes were bright with interest. The medical crisis seemed to have passed, but something else had happened during those frightening hours. The three of them had become a unit, a team working together to keep Tommy safe and comfortable. Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent into Boston Logan Airport, the pilot's voice announced over the intercom. Please return your seats to the upright position and make sure your seatbelts are fastened. Elon felt a strange reluctance as the plane began to descend. Up here, at 30,000 feet, they had found something precious together. Down on the ground, real life would intrude again. Phone calls about work, decisions about the future, the complicated business of figuring out what came next. What time is Tommy's appointment? He asked. 10:30, Justine replied, checking her watch. We should have just enough time to get to the hospital. We? Elon noted again. Stop analyzing my pronouns, Justine said with a small laugh. Yes, we. If you want to come with us, I'd like you to be there. Are you sure? It might be a long day. Lots of tests, lots of waiting around. I'm sure, she said firmly. Tommy responds to you in a way that could be helpful for the doctors to see. And she paused, then continued more quietly. I don't want to do this alone anymore. The admission hung between them as the plane touched down smoothly on the runway. Outside the windows, Boston looked grey and cold under the early morning sky, but inside their little bubble of seats, everything felt warm and right. As the plane taxied to the gate, other passengers began gathering their belongings and preparing to leave. But Elon, Justine, and Tommy remained seated, reluctant to break the spell of the flight that had brought them back together. Ready? Justine asked finally, as the seatbelt sign turned off and people began filing out of the plane. Elon looked at Tommy, who was reaching for him to be picked up. He looked at Justine, who was watching him with an expression of hope and trust he hadn't seen in years. Ready? He said, lifting Tommy into his arms. As they walked off the plane together, Tommy riding on Elon's shoulders and chattering happily about rockets and stars, Elon realized something had fundamentally changed. Not just in the past few hours, but in himself. For the first time in years, He wasn't thinking about the next meeting, the next deadline, the next problem to solve. He was completely present in this moment, with these people heading toward whatever came next together. And it felt like the most important thing he had ever done. Boston Logan Airport was busy with morning travelers rushing to catch flights and families reuniting after long trips. Elon carried Tommy through the crowds while Justine handled their bags. Several people recognized Elon and pulled out their phones to take pictures, but he barely noticed. All his attention was focused on the little boy on his shoulders who was pointing at airplanes through the terminal windows. "Big plane," Tommy said excitedly, watching a jumbo jet taxi past. "Very big," Elon agreed, "but not as big as the rockets we're going to build someday." "We build rockets?" Tommy asked, with wide eyes. "If you want to. When you're feeling all better." The promise felt natural, like something he had always planned to do. Elon found himself already imagining teaching Tommy about engineering, showing him how things worked, watching him discover the joy of building something with his own hands. At the baggage claim, Justine's phone rang. She answered it quickly, her face tense with worry. "Yes, this is Justine Wilson," she said. "We just landed." "What? Are you sure?" "Okay, yes, we'll be there as soon as possible." She hung up and turned to Elon with a mixture of excitement and fear in her eyes. "That was Dr. Martinez's office," she explained. "They had a cancellation this morning. If we can get there in the next hour, she can see Tommy right away instead of waiting until this afternoon." "That's good news, right?" Elon asked, though Justine's expression suggested it might be more complicated. "It means we'll get answers sooner," she said. "But it also means less time to prepare Tommy for what might be a very long day of tests." Elon looked down at Tommy, who was now fascinated by the moving baggage carousel. He seemed so much better than he had on the plane, alert and curious and full of energy. It was hard to believe he was seriously ill. "We'll figure it out as we go," Elon said, echoing Justine's words from the night before. "That's what parents do, right?" The word parents slipped out before he could stop it. Justine looked at him with surprise, but not the uncomfortable kind. More like she was seeing something she had been hoping to find. "Right," she said softly. "That's what parents do." They took a taxi to Boston Children's Hospital, Tommy sitting between them and chattering happily about everything he saw through the windows. Boston looked different in the morning light than it had from the airplane. Older, more solid, full of history and hope. "Hospital?" Tommy asked as they pulled up to the large medical complex. "Yes, sweetheart," Justine said, lifting him out of the car. "We're going to see a very nice doctor who's going to help you feel even better." "Will it hurt?" Tommy asked, and for the first time since waking up, he looked scared. Elon knelt down so he was at Tommy's eye level. "Some of it might be a little uncomfortable," he said honestly, "but Justine and I will be with you the whole time. And afterward we'll do something fun." "What would you like to do?" Tommy thought seriously for a moment. "See real rockets?" "I know exactly where we can see real rockets," Elon said with a smile. "Deal?" "Deal," Tommy said solemnly, and held out his small hand for Elon to shake. The handshake was so formal and grown up that both adults couldn't help but smile. This little boy, who had been desperately sick just hours before, was now making business deals about rocket visits. Inside the hospital, they were directed to the pediatric immunology department. The waiting room was decorated with cheerful murals of animals and spaceships, clearly designed to make young patients feel less scared. Tommy immediately gravitated toward a play area with building blocks and toy cars. "Mr. Musk?" a voice called out. Elon turned to see a hospital administrator approaching with a clipboard and a nervous expression. "I'm Sarah Chen, the department administrator," she said. "We're so honored to have you here. Dr. Martinez wanted me to tell you that if there's anything special you need during your visit, private waiting room, additional security, anything at all, we're happy to accommodate. Thank you, Elon said politely. But we just want to be treated like any other family. Tommy's comfort is the only thing that matters today. The woman looked surprised but pleased. Of course, Dr. Martinez will be with you shortly. As they settled into the waiting area, Elon noticed other families around them. The mother holding a sleeping baby, parents playing quietly with a school-age girl who was clearly undergoing treatment, grandparents reading to a little boy with a bald head who was probably fighting cancer. Each family was dealing with their own medical crisis, their own fears and hopes. Elon felt a deep respect for all of them and a new understanding of what Justine had been handling alone for months. "Are you nervous?" Justine asked quietly, watching Tommy build an elaborate tower with foam blocks. Terrified, Elon admitted, "What if the news is bad? What if there's nothing they can do?" "Then we deal with it," Justine said simply. "Together. One day at a time." "Together," Elon repeated, and the word felt like a promise. Dr. Martinez appeared in the waiting room doorway right on time. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair, wearing a white coat decorated with colorful stickers that patients had obviously given her over the years. "Tommy," she called out cheerfully, "I'm Dr. Martinez. Are you ready to come see my office? I have some really cool toys in there." Tommy looked up from his blocks, then over at Elon and Justine. "We all go?" he asked. "We all go," Dr. Martinez confirmed with a warm smile. "I always like to meet the whole family." As they followed the doctor down the hallway, Tommy walking between them and holding both their hands, Elon felt something settle into place in his chest. A sense of rightness, of purpose, that had nothing to do with rockets or cars or changing the world. This was his family, not the family he had planned or expected, but the family that had found him on an airplane in the middle of the night. The family that needed him to be present, to be steady, to be the kind of man who stayed. Whatever Dr. Martinez had to tell them, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And somehow, that felt like the greatest achievement of his entire life. Dr. Martinez's office was unlike any doctor's office Elon had ever seen. The walls were covered with drawings from young patients, rockets, rainbows, stick figure families, and messages like "Thank you for making me better." The doctor's desk had a small collection of action figures standing guard next to her computer, and a mobile of planets and stars hung from the ceiling. "Welcome to my space station," Dr. Martinez said with a grin, noticing Tommy's fascination with the hanging planets. "Would you like to sit in the special captain's chair?" She pointed to a child-sized examination table that had been decorated to look like a spaceship cockpit, complete with buttons that lit up and made soft beeping sounds when pressed. Tommy looked at Elon uncertainly. "You come too." "I'll be right here the whole time," Elon promised, pulling up a chair next to the examination table. "Justine will be here too. We're not going anywhere." As Dr. Martinez began her examination, she talked constantly to Tommy, explaining everything she was doing in simple terms. She listened to his heart and called it checking the engine. She looked in his ears and said she was making sure the communication systems are working. When she checked his throat, she told him she was inspecting the fuel intake system. Tommy giggled at each explanation, completely at ease with this doctor, who spoke his new favorite language of space and rockets. "Now I need to ask you grown-ups some questions," Dr. Martinez said, settling into a chair with Tommy's file. "Tell me about the past few months. When did you first notice he was getting sick more often than usual?" Justine explained the pattern of infections, the failed treatments, the sleepless nights and constant worry. As she talked, Elon found himself taking mental notes, filing away details he wished he had known sooner. "And last night on the plane?" Dr. Martinez asked. "Tell me about that episode." His fever spiked suddenly. Justine said. It was the worst I'd seen it, but when Elon talked to him and used that cooling device, he calmed down almost immediately. Dr. Martinez looked at Elon with interest. You're not listed as Tommy's guardian in his file. What's your relationship to the family? The question hung in the air. Legally, Elon was nothing to Tommy. Just a man who happened to be on the same airplane. But emotionally, the connection felt deeper and more real than many relationships he'd had for years. It's complicated, Justine said, when Elon hesitated. Elon is my ex-husband. Tommy's father was my brother, who looked very much like Elon. Tommy seems to respond to him as if he's family. How interesting, Dr. Martinez said, making notes. Children with immune deficiencies often struggle with stress and anxiety, which can make their symptoms worse. If Tommy finds comfort in your presence, Mr. Musk, that could actually be medically beneficial. What exactly do you think is wrong with him? Elon asked. Based on his symptoms and family history, I suspect he has a primary immunodeficiency disorder, the doctor explained. Specifically something called selective IgA deficiency. It means his body doesn't make enough of certain antibodies that fight off infections. Is it serious? Justine asked, her voice tight with worry. It can be, but it's also very treatable, Dr. Martinez said reassuringly. With monthly immunoglobulin treatments and some preventive care, most children with this condition go on to live completely normal, healthy lives. Elon felt a wave of relief so strong it made him dizzy. Not life-threatening, not terminal, treatable. However, the doctor continued, I need to run some tests to confirm the diagnosis. Blood work, immune function panels, some genetic testing. It will take most of the day, and some of the procedures might be uncomfortable for Tommy. Tommy, who had been quietly playing with the buttons on the examination table, looked up at the mention of his name. More tests? He asked. A few more, Dr. Martinez said gently. But I have a special reward system. Every time you're brave during a test, you get a sticker. And when you have 5 stickers, you get to choose a prize from my treasure box. She showed Tommy a large box filled with small toys, books and games. His eyes lit up with interest. Rocket? He asked hopefully. I think we might have a rocket or two in there, the doctor said with a wink. As they prepared to leave for the first round of tests, Elon's phone buzzed with an urgent call. It was his assistant, probably wondering where he was and why he hadn't answered any messages since the night before. He looked at the phone, then at Tommy, who was holding both his and Justine's hands as they walked down the hospital corridor. Without hesitation, Elon turned off his phone and slipped it into his pocket. Important call? Justine asked, having noticed the interaction. Not as important as this, Elon said simply. The blood draw was in a cheerful room, decorated with underwater themes. Tommy sat bravely in Elon's lap while the nurse, who introduced herself as Nurse Shark, prepared the needle. Tell me about rockets while she does this, Tommy said, gripping Elon's hand tightly. So Elon told him about the International Space Station, about astronauts who lived among the stars, about missions to Mars that would happen someday soon. As he talked, Tommy's grip relaxed, and he barely flinched when the needle went in. All done, Nurse Shark announced. You were incredibly brave. That definitely earns you a sticker. Tommy beamed with pride as she placed a shiny rocket sticker on his shirt. The next few hours were a blur of different rooms, different tests, different medical professionals who all seemed to know exactly how to make Tommy feel safe and comfortable. Through it all, Elon and Justine stayed by his side, taking turns holding him, distracting him, celebrating each small victory. During a break between tests, they sat in a family lounge where Tommy dozed in Elon's arms, exhausted but peaceful. I keep thinking about the plane, Justine said quietly. About how you just appeared right when we needed you most. Like the universe knew we couldn't handle this alone anymore. Or maybe Elon said, looking down at Tommy's sleeping face. The universe knew I needed you both just as much as you needed me. Do you really believe that? Elon thought about his life before last night. The endless meetings, the constant pressure, the feeling that he was always running towards something but never quite reaching it. Then he thought about the past 12 hours, the sense of purpose and ease he'd found in simply being present for this child. Yes, he said, I really do. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Tommy had earned all 5 stickers and was proudly wearing them across his shirt, like medals of honor. He had chosen a small toy rocket from Dr. Martinez's treasure box and was making soft whooshing sounds as he flew it through the air. The last test results should be ready soon, Dr. Martinez said, returning to the family lounge where they had been waiting. Tommy has been absolutely wonderful today. I've rarely seen a child his age handle so many procedures with such bravery. He had good support, Justine said, glancing at Elon, who was currently helping Tommy build a space station out of foam blocks. Yes, I noticed that, the doctor said thoughtfully. The nursing staff mentioned how calm he stays when Mr. Musk is with him. It's quite remarkable. Elon looked up from the blocks. Is that unusual? Very. Children with chronic illnesses often develop anxiety around medical procedures. They associate hospitals with pain and discomfort. But Tommy seems to see this as an adventure because you've made it feel safe for him. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Dr. Martinez. The lab results are ready. Perfect timing, the doctor said. Would you like to come back to my office? As they gathered their things, Tommy reached up for Elon to carry him. Tired, he said simply, resting his head on Elon's shoulder. You've had a very big day, little astronaut, Elon said softly. You've been braver than any astronaut I know. Back in the space-themed office, Dr. Martinez spread several papers across her desk. Her expression was serious but not worried, which Elon took as a good sign. The good news, she began, is that my initial diagnosis was correct. Tommy has selective EDA deficiency, which is one of the most common immune system disorders. It affects about 1 in every 500 people. And the treatment? Justine asked, leaning forward in her chair. Monthly immunoglobulin infusions. Dr. Martinez explained. We give Tommy antibodies through an IV to replace the ones his body can't make on its own. Most children tolerate it very well, and it dramatically reduces the frequency and severity of infections. How long will he need these treatments? Elon asked. Probably for life, the doctor said honestly. But the good news is that as he gets older, many children learn to manage their condition very well. They can play sports, go to school, travel, do everything other kids do. They just need to be a little more careful about staying healthy and keeping up with their treatments. Elon felt relief wash over him like a warm wave, not cured but manageable. Tommy could live a normal, happy life. There's something else, Dr. Martinez continued, something interesting that came up in the genetic testing. She pulled out another sheet of paper covered with complex-looking charts and numbers. Tommy's condition isn't random, she explained. It's genetic, which means he inherited it from one of his parents. But here's what's fascinating. The specific genetic markers suggest this condition has been in his family line for several generations. What does that mean? Justine asked. It means other people in Tommy's family tree likely had similar immune issues, even if they were never properly diagnosed. Given what you told me about losing a child to unexplained illness years ago, she looked at Elon and Justine with gentle eyes. It's possible that Nevada had the same condition. Back then we didn't have the diagnostic tools we have now. Many children with immune deficiencies were misdiagnosed or went undiagnosed entirely. The words hit Elon like a physical blow. Nevada. Their first son, who had died so young, so mysteriously. All these years they had blamed themselves, wondered what they could have done differently. You're saying Nevada might have lived if we had known. Justine whispered, tears starting to flow. I'm saying it's possible, Dr. Martinez said carefully, but please don't torture yourselves with what-ifs. Medicine has advanced tremendously in the past 15 years. We know things now that we simply didn't know then. Elon felt like the room was spinning. All those years of guilt, of thinking he should have worked less and paid more attention, of believing somehow he could have prevented the tragedy that destroyed their marriage. The important thing, Dr. Martinez continued, is that we know now we can treat Tommy. We can give him the life that previous generations didn't have access to. Tommy, oblivious to the emotional weight of the conversation, was making his toy rocket land on different planets around the office. Mars, he announced, crash-landing the rocket on Dr. Martinez's desk calendar. Someday you might really go to Mars, Elon said, his voice thick with emotion. When you're all grown up and healthy and strong. With you? Tommy asked hopefully. If you want me to come with you, Elon said, meaning every word. Dr. Martinez smiled at the exchange. I'd like to schedule Tommy's first treatment for next week. Can you stay in Boston that long, or would you prefer to arrange something closer to home? Elon and Justine looked at each other. They hadn't talked about what would happen after today, where they would go, how they would handle the ongoing treatments. We'll figure it out, Justine said. Whatever's best for Tommy. Good, the doctor said, standing up. Tommy, you've been such a good patient today. I have something special for you. She opened a drawer and pulled out a certificate decorated with rockets and stars. This is your official bravery award, she announced. It says that Tommy Wilson is one of the bravest space explorers to ever visit our hospital. Tommy's face lit up with pure joy. Can I show Daddy Elon? The words slipped out so naturally that Tommy didn't seem to realize what he had said. But everyone else in the room heard it clearly. Daddy Elon. Justine's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with surprise. Dr. Martinez looked between them with understanding dawning on her face. And Elon felt his heart expand so quickly he thought it might burst from his chest. I would be honored to see your award, he managed to say, his voice barely steady. As Tommy proudly showed off his certificate, chattering about rockets and Mars and how brave he had been, Elon caught Justine's eye over the little boy's head. Is this really happening? He mouthed silently. I think it is, she mouthed back, tears streaming down her face. And somehow, in a doctor's office decorated with children's drawings and toy rockets, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the sound of a 2-year-old's laughter, Elon Musk found the family he never knew he was looking for. The drive from the hospital to Elon's Boston house was quiet except for Tommy's happy chatter about his day. He clutched his bravery certificate in one hand and his toy rocket in the other, retelling the story of each test to his stuffed elephant, which Justine had packed in their emergency bag. And then the nice shark lady took my blood. But Daddy Elon told me about space stations, so I wasn't scared, Tommy explained to the elephant with serious 2-year-old logic. Every time he said Daddy Elon, both adults felt their hearts skip a beat. But neither corrected him. It felt too right, too natural, like a title Elon had been waiting his whole life to earn. Elon's Cambridge house was modern and sleek, all glass and steel, overlooking the Charles River. Usually the space felt cold and empty to him, but as soon as Tommy toddled through the front door, everything changed. Big house, Tommy announced, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. Where's my room? Let me show you, Elon said, lifting Tommy onto his shoulders for the grand tour. The guest bedroom had been hastily prepared by Elon's housekeeper, who had somehow managed to find a crib and child-proof the room in the few hours since Elon had called. Tommy was delighted with everything, especially the view of the river from his window. Boats, he pointed excitedly at the sailing crews practicing on the water below. Those are called sculls, Elon explained. The people are rowing. Would you like to try rowing someday? Yes, Tommy said immediately, though he clearly had no idea what rowing actually involved. While Justine got Tommy settled for a nap, the long day at the hospital had exhausted him. Elon found himself pacing the living room, his mind racing with thoughts and plans and possibilities. When Justine came downstairs 20 minutes later, she found him standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring out at the river but clearly seeing something else entirely. "He's out like a light," she said softly. "Poor little guy was completely worn out." "Good," Elon said, turning to face her. "He deserves to rest after being so brave today." They stood looking at each other across the spacious room, and suddenly the weight of everything that had happened in the past 24 hours seemed to settle between them. The flight, the medical crisis, the diagnosis, the moment Tommy had called him Daddy. "We should talk," Justine said. "Yes," Elon agreed. "We should." They settled on the couch facing the river, leaving space between them but somehow feeling closer than they had in years. The evening light was soft and golden, painting everything in warm colors. "I keep thinking this is all a dream," Justine said. "Yesterday morning, I was facing Tommy's illness alone, terrified about the test results, wondering how I was going to manage everything by myself. And now you're not alone," Elon finished quietly. "No," she said, looking at him with something that might have been wonder. "I'm not alone. But Elon, I need to understand what this means. What you want it to mean." The question hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and fear and hope. "I want it to mean everything," Elon said honestly. "I want to be Tommy's father in every way that matters. I want to take him to his treatments, teach him about rockets, be there when he's sick and when he's celebrating. I want to be the man he thinks I am when he calls me Daddy." "And what about us?" Justine asked quietly. "What about you and me?" Elon was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. "I've spent the last 10 years trying to change the world," he said finally. "Building rockets to Mars, creating electric cars, working 18-hour days because I thought that was how you save humanity. But sitting in that hospital today, watching you care for Tommy, seeing how naturally we work together, I realized I've been looking for salvation in all the wrong places." Justine's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe saving the world starts with saving one family. Maybe the most important mission I'll ever have is right here, in this house, with a little boy who needs monthly treatments and bedtime stories about rockets. And his aunt who's terrified of trusting you again." Justine asked with a shaky smile. "Especially his aunt," Elon said softly. "The woman I never stopped loving, even when I was too stupid and scared to show it properly." The admission hung between them like a bridge. Neither was sure they were ready to cross. "I loved you too," Justine said quietly. "I never stopped. Even when I hated you for leaving, even when I married someone else hoping it would help me forget you. But Elon, love wasn't our problem before. The problem was that you couldn't stay still long enough to let yourself be loved." "I know," he said. "I know I hurt you. I know I chose work over family more times than I can count. I know I have no right to ask for another chance." "Then why are you asking?" Elon looked toward the stairs where Tommy was sleeping peacefully, probably dreaming about rockets and space stations, and the day he had been braver than any astronaut. "Because that little boy deserves a father who shows up," he said. "Because you deserve a partner who stays. And because I finally understand that all the rockets in the world won't matter if I don't have people to come home to." Justine was crying openly now, not trying to hide the tears. "What about your companies, your mission to Mars? You can't just walk away from everything you've built." "Not walking away," Elon said. "I'm finding a better way to do it all. A way that includes family time and doctor appointments and bedtime stories. A way that puts the people I love first instead of last. Do you really think you can change? Really and truly? Elon thought about his phone, which had been turned off for hours without him even thinking about it. He thought about the meetings he had missed, the calls he hadn't returned, the urgent emails sitting unread in his inbox. 24 hours ago, that would have given him a panic attack. Now, it felt like freedom. I think Tommy is already changing me, he said. I think you both are. I turned off my phone today and forgot about it completely. I missed meetings with MIT professors and board members, and I didn't care. All I cared about was making sure a 2-year-old boy felt safe and loved. That's a start, Justine said, wiping her eyes. It's more than a start, Elon said. It's a complete shift in everything I thought mattered. Tommy called me Daddy today, and it felt more important than any rocket launch, any product unveiling, any achievement I've ever had. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set over the Charles River, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Somewhere upstairs, Tommy was sleeping peacefully, dreaming whatever dreams brave little boys have after a day of conquering their fears. So what happens now? Justine asked finally. Now we figure it out together, Elon said. One day at a time. One treatment at a time. One bedtime story at a time. Together, she repeated like she was testing how the word felt. Together, Elon confirmed. If you'll have me, if you'll trust me to be the man Tommy already thinks I am. Justine looked at him for a long moment, studying his face like she was seeing him for the first time. Okay, she said finally. Let's try. Elon woke up to the sound of laughter drifting through his house. For a moment, he was completely disoriented. When was the last time there had been laughter in this place? When was the last time he had woken up to sounds that meant joy instead, at just the hum of electronics and the distant traffic of Cambridge? Then he remembered. Justine and Tommy were here. They had fallen asleep on the couch last night, talking until nearly midnight about practical things, treatment schedules, living arrangements, how to tell their other children about this unexpected reunion. But mostly they had talked about hope, about the possibility of building something new from the pieces of what they used to have. He found them in the kitchen, where Justine was attempting to make pancakes, while Tommy helped by adding what appeared to be far too much flour to everything within reach. There was flour on the counter, flour on the floor, flour in Tommy's hair, and flour handprints on the refrigerator. Good morning, Elon said, and realized he meant it more than he had in years. We're making breakfast, Tommy announced proudly, showing Elon his flour-covered hands. I'm the best helper. I can see that, Elon said solemnly, surveying the cheerful disaster. This looks like very serious work. The most serious, Justine agreed, wiping flour from Tommy's nose with a dish towel. She was smiling in a way Elon hadn't seen since they were young and newly married, before life got complicated and hearts got broken. Can I help? Elon asked. Sure, Tommy said immediately. You can be the other helper, but I'm still the best one. Absolutely, Elon agreed, rolling up his sleeves. I'll just be the assistant helper. As they cooked together, or rather, as Justine tried to cook while Elon and Tommy created what could generously be called organized chaos, Elon found himself thinking about all the mornings he had spent alone in this kitchen. Quick coffee, maybe a protein bar grabbed on the way to the car, always rushing toward the next meeting or crisis or world-changing project. How much life had he missed in his hurry to get somewhere else? What time is your flight back to LA? He asked as they sat down to eat pancakes that were slightly burned but somehow perfect anyway. 3 o'clock, Justine said, not quite meeting his eyes. 3 o'clock. In less than 6 hours, they would be gone, and this house would go back to being beautiful and empty and cold. The thought made something twist in Elon's chest. You don't have to go today, he said carefully. Tommy should probably rest another day after all those tests. And there's so much more we need to figure out about his treatment plan. Elon, Justine said gently, we can't stay forever. Not forever, he agreed quickly. Just a little longer. A few more days. Maybe a week. The hope in his voice was embarrassing, but he couldn't help it. 24 hours ago he had been alone. Now he had a family, and the thought of losing them again so soon felt unbearable. What about your meetings? Justine asked. Your companies? The world saving? Elon looked at Tommy, who was seriously concentrating on cutting his pancakes into what he declared were rocket shapes. Each piece had to be perfect before he would take a bite. I've been thinking about that, Elon said. What if I worked differently? What if instead of flying all over the world for meetings, I used video calls more? What if I delegated more, trusted the teams to handle things that don't absolutely require me to be there in person? That sounds suspiciously like work-life balance, Justine said with a small smile. Are you sure you're still Elon Musk? Maybe I'm a better version of Elon Musk, he said. The version who learned that the most important rocket launch is the one that brings you home. Tommy looked up from his rocket-shaped pancakes. Are we home? He asked with the simple curiosity of a 2-year-old. The question hung in the air. Were they home? This house had never felt like home to Elon, just a place to sleep between trips. But with Tommy's toys scattered on the floor and Justine's coffee cup next to his on the table, it felt different. It felt alive. What do you think, Elon asked Tommy seriously. Does this feel like home to you? Tommy looked around the kitchen, taking in the flour-covered surfaces and the morning light streaming through the windows, and the two adults who were both looking at him like he hung the moon. Yes, he said simply. This is home. We're family, and family lives in the same home. Out of the mouths of babes, Elon thought. Tommy had summed up everything the adults had been dancing around for hours. He's right, Justine said quietly. We are family. The question is, what kind of family do we want to be? Before Elon could answer, his phone rang. Not the cell phone he had turned off yesterday, but the house phone that only his assistant and a few key people had the number for. Real emergencies only. For a split second, Elon felt the familiar pull of responsibility, the magnetic draw of whatever crisis needed his immediate attention. Then he looked at Tommy, who was watching him with those bright, trusting eyes. Let it go to voicemail, Justine said softly. But what if it's urgent? Elon asked even as he made no move toward the phone. What if it is? She challenged gently. What if it's the most urgent call you've ever received? Is it more urgent than this conversation? More urgent than Tommy's first morning feeling safe and healthy in months? The phone stopped ringing. In the silence that followed, Elon could hear his own heartbeat, Tommy's happy humming as he ate his rocket pancakes, the distant sound of boats on the Charles River. You're right, he said. Whatever it is, it can wait. Daddy Elon, Tommy said suddenly, will you read me a story after breakfast? What kind of story would you like? Elon asked, his heart doing that skip it did every time Tommy called him Daddy. About a rocket that goes to space but always comes back home, Tommy said with the perfect logic of a child who had figured out what mattered most. I know exactly the story, Elon said. It's about a rocket that traveled all over the universe, visiting every planet and star. But no matter how far it went or how many amazing things it saw, it always came back to Earth. Because that's where its family was waiting. And they lived happily ever after? Tommy asked hopefully. Elon looked across the table at Justine, who was watching him with an expression of cautious hope and deep affection. He thought about the choice he was making, the life he was choosing over the one he had built. Yes, he said, meaning it with every part of his heart. They lived happily ever after. As they finished breakfast and planned their day, a walk by the river, maybe a visit to the science museum, Definitely more stories about rockets that always came home. Elon felt something settle into place in his chest. A sense of rightness, of purpose that had nothing to do with Mars missions or electric cars or changing the world. This was his world now. This kitchen full of flour and laughter. This little boy who called him daddy. This woman who was giving him a second chance he didn't deserve but would spend the rest of his life earning. The phone rang again, and this time, Elon didn't even glance toward it. He was exactly where he belonged. But at noon, his phone started buzzing with a different kind of urgency. Text messages, then calls, then more text messages. Finally, his assistant managed to reach him on his cell phone, which he had finally turned back on. "Elon, thank God," Gwyn Shotwell's voice came through the speaker. "There's a crisis with the Starship launch scheduled for next week. The FAA is threatening to delay the launch indefinitely, and the media is calling it a potential setback for commercial spaceflight." Elon looked across the living room where Justine was reading to Tommy, both of them curled up on the couch with a picture book about a brave little rabbit. This was exactly the kind of moment he used to abandon for business emergencies. "Can it wait until tomorrow?" he asked, surprising himself with how calm his voice sounded. "Elon, this is a $2 billion program," Gwyn said, her voice tight with stress. "The future of human space exploration could depend on how we handle this. The team needs to see you fighting for this." "Can it wait until tomorrow?" he repeated, more firmly this time. There was silence on the other end, then Gwyn's confused voice. Yes, I suppose it can. But Elon, are you okay? You sound different." "I'm trying to be," Elon said, watching Tommy point excitedly at a picture of the rabbit reaching the moon. "Handle what you can today. Set up a video conference for tomorrow morning. I'll deal with the FAA then." "A video conference? But don't you think you should fly back to Texas and—" "Tomorrow morning, Gwyn." Video conference. He hung up and turned off the phone again. When he looked up, he found Justine watching him with a careful expression. "Work emergency?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "It can wait," Elon said, sitting down on the floor next to the couch. "Right now, this is more important." But even as he said it, part of his brain was already spinning through solutions to the FAA problem, calculating launch windows and regulatory strategies. Old habits died hard. Tommy climbed down from the couch and settled in Elon's lap with his book. "Read about the rocket rabbit," he demanded, opening to his favorite page. So Elon read about the brave rabbit who built a rocket to visit the moon, using silly voices for different characters and making Tommy giggle. But his mind kept drifting to the Starship program, to the millions of dollars at stake, to the dreams of Mars that could be delayed by regulatory red tape. "You're not really here," Justine observed quietly when the story was finished and Tommy had wandered off to play with his blocks. "What do you mean? Your body is here, but your mind is in Texas, solving problems and managing crises. I can practically see the wheels turning." Elon started to deny it, then stopped. She was right. Even with his phone turned off, even with his commitment to being present, part of him was still running calculations and strategies in the background. "I'm trying," he said honestly. "But yes, I'm thinking about the launch, about what could go wrong if I'm not there to manage it personally. And what's the worst thing that could happen if you handle it remotely?" Elon thought about it seriously. The launch gets delayed a few weeks, maybe a month. We lose some momentum, some media attention. Stock prices might drop temporarily. And what's the worst thing that could happen if you leave Tommy and me to go manage it in person? The question hit him like a punch to the stomach. He looked at Tommy, who was building an elaborate tower with his blocks, humming contentedly. Then he looked at Justine, who was trying to keep her expression neutral, but couldn't quite hide the fear in her eyes. "You stopped trusting me again," he said quietly. Tommy learns that work always comes first. And I prove that I haven't really changed at all. I'm not asking you to choose between your work and us, Justine said carefully. I'm asking you to find a way to do both without losing yourself. Without losing us. That afternoon, they took Tommy to the Boston Children's Museum. He was fascinated by the construction zone exhibit, where he could build towers with foam blocks and knock them down with toy bulldozers. His concentration was intense and methodical, just like Elon's had been as a child. He reminds me of you, Justine observed, watching Tommy carefully arrange blocks by color before building. The way you used to work on those computer programs for hours when we first met. He's got Damien's artistic eye though, Elon said, noticing how Tommy arranged the colors in pleasing patterns. Look at how he balances the design with the structure. It was the first time either of them had mentioned Damien since learning about Tommy's condition. And Justine's face clouded over. He would have loved this, she said quietly. Watching Tommy play, seeing him healthy and happy and building things. Tell me about him, Elon said. About who Damien became after I stopped paying attention. So Justine told him about Damien's struggles with addiction that started in high school, his periods of recovery and relapse, his incredible talent for creating sculptures from recycled materials, about how he had gotten clean when Tommy was born, how devoted he had been as a father despite his own childhood wounds. He called me the night he relapsed, Justine said, tears flowing freely now. He was high, but he was lucid enough to be scared. He said, "Jus, I messed up. I messed up bad. Promise me you'll take care of Tommy if something happens to me." I thought he was just being dramatic. Damien was always dramatic. Elon pulled her close, right there in the middle of the children's museum, and let her cry. Tommy, sensing the adult emotions around him, came over and patted both their legs comfortingly. "Sad?" he asked in his small voice. "A little sad," Justine said, scooping him up, "but happy too. Happy that we have you, and happy that we have each other." Tommy smiled and hugged them both. "Family," he said with satisfaction, like he was confirming something important. That evening, as they cooked dinner together, Elon was learning that cooking with Tommy meant accepting that everything would be messier but infinitely more joyful. Elon's phone rang again. This time it was his brother Kimball. "Are you okay?" Kimball asked without preamble. "Gwen called me. She's worried about you. She said you sounded different." "I am different," Elon said, watching Tommy carefully stir pasta sauce with a wooden spoon that was almost as big as he was. "Or maybe I'm becoming who I was supposed to be all along." "What does that mean?" Elon looked around his kitchen, which now had Tommy's artwork stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, his sippy cup on the counter, his booster seat at the table. 24 hours ago, this space had been sterile and perfect. Now it looked like a home. "It means I found something more important than rockets," he said. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Then Kimball's careful voice. "More important than rockets? Are you sure you're my brother?" "I'm more sure of who I am than I've been in years," Elon said. "I'll call you tomorrow. Right now, I'm teaching my son how to make spaghetti." "Your son?" Kimball's voice went up an octave. "Elon, what the hell is going on?" "I'll explain everything later. But Kimball, I'm happy. Really genuinely happy. For the first time in longer than I can remember." After he hung up, Justine looked at him with raised eyebrows. "Your son? If he'll have me," Elon said simply. "If you'll both have me." That night, after Tommy was asleep and they were sitting on the couch with glasses of wine, watching the lights reflect off the Charles River, Justine asked the question that had been hanging between them all day. "So what happens now? Do we stay here? Do we go back to LA? Do we try to build something new, or do we pick up where we left off 15 years ago?" Elon was quiet for a long time, thinking. "I don't think we can pick up where we left off," he said finally. "We're different people now. You're stronger, more independent. I'm trying to be better. Less obsessed with work, more focused on what actually matters." "And what actually matters?" "This," he said, gesturing around them. Tommy sleeping upstairs, dreaming about rockets and space stations. You trusting me enough to let me be part of his life. The possibility that we could build something even better than what we had before. Better how? More honest, more balanced, based on who we really are now, not who we were when we were kids, who thought love could solve everything. Justine nodded slowly. "I like that idea. But Elon, it's going to take work. Real work. Daily choices to put family first, to be present even when it's hard, to communicate instead of running away into work when things get complicated." "I know," he said, "and I know I don't have a perfect track record with those things. But I want to try. I want to be the man Tommy thinks I am when he calls me daddy." "And what kind of man is that?" Elon thought about the past 2 days, about staying calm during Tommy's medical crisis, about turning off his phone and ignoring urgent calls, about finding joy in flower-covered kitchens and bedtime stories about brave rabbits. "The kind who stays," he said. "The kind who shows up. The kind who knows that the most important mission isn't getting to Mars, it's making sure the people you love feel safe and valued and protected right here on Earth." The next morning brought the biggest test yet of Elon's promise. His phone exploded with calls at 6 a.m. The SpaceX crisis had gotten worse overnight. Stock prices were dropping. Board members were panicking. The media was calling it a potential catastrophe for commercial spaceflight. Elon sat on the edge of his bed, watching the sunrise paint the Charles River golden, and listened to message after message of increasing desperation from his team. "Elon, we need you here," came Gwyn's voice through the phone. "The FAA wants to meet in person today. The investors are threatening to pull funding if we can't resolve this immediately. This could destroy everything we've built." In the next room, he could hear Tommy's cheerful chatter as Justine helped him get dressed, probably in the rocket ship pajamas that had become his uniform. The little boy was singing a song about spaceships, making up words as he went along. This was exactly the kind of moment where Elon's old self would have been on a plane to Texas within the hour, abandoning everything else to fight for his companies. His life's work was potentially crumbling, and he was sitting in a bedroom listening to a 2-year-old sing about rockets. "Daddy Elon," Tommy's voice called from the hallway, "come see my rocket ship." Elon looked at his buzzing phone, then toward the sound of Tommy's voice. For just a moment he felt the familiar pull of crisis management, the magnetic draw of problems that only he could solve. Then he remembered the promise he had made. Not just to Justine, but to himself, to be the kind of man who... He turned off his phone and went to see Tommy's rocket ship. "Look," Tommy said proudly, showing off a tower of blocks that did indeed look remarkably like a rocket. "It goes to space, but it always comes home." "That's the most important kind of rocket," Elon said solemnly, kneeling down to Tommy's level. "The kind that remembers to come home." At breakfast, Tommy insisted on sitting in Elon's lap while eating his cereal, chattering about his dreams and asking a million questions about everything from why the sky was blue to whether astronauts could bring teddy bears to space. "Of course they can bring teddy bears," Elon said seriously. "Astronauts need something to hug when they miss their families on Earth." "Like I hug you when I'm scared?" Tommy asked. "Exactly like that." Justine watched this exchange with an expression that mixed amazement with cautious hope. She had seen Elon with their other children over the years, but never like this. Never so completely present, so patient with the endless questions of a curious toddler. Your phone has been buzzing for 20 minutes, she observed quietly when Tommy ran off to get his toy rocket. I know, Elon said. It can wait. Can it really? It sounds urgent. Elon looked at her carefully, wondering if this was a test. Are you telling me I should take the calls? I'm telling you that I don't want to be the reason your life's work falls apart, she said honestly. I don't want Tommy and me to be something you resent later because you had to choose. You're not something I have to choose, Elon said firmly. You're what I'm choosing. There's a difference. His phone rang again. This time it was his brother Kimball, which meant the family was starting to worry too. Take it, Justine said. But take it here with us. Don't disappear into another room to save the world. Stay here and figure out how to save the world while still being present. So Elon took the call, but he stayed in the kitchen. He put it on speaker so Justine could hear, and he sat at the table where he could see Tommy playing with his blocks in the living room. Elon, what the hell is going on? Kimball's voice filled the kitchen. Gwen called me. She says you won't come back to Texas, that you're handling a major crisis through video calls. Are you having some kind of breakdown? I'm having some kind of breakthrough, Elon replied, watching Tommy carefully balance a red block on top of a blue one. I'm learning that I can run companies without living in a constant state of crisis. But this isn't just any problem. This could shut down the Starship program entirely. Then we'll find another way, Elon said calmly. We'll work with the regulators instead of fighting them. We'll address their concerns systematically. We'll prove that we can be responsible partners instead of demanding special treatment. There was silence on the other end. Then Kimball's bewildered voice. That's actually a really good strategy. Why didn't we think of that before? Because before, I was always in fight mode, Elon admitted. Always assuming that any obstacle was something to overcome through force of will and 16-hour days. But maybe some problems are better solved through patience and collaboration. When Tommy's tower fell down, instead of getting frustrated, he immediately started building again. But this time he built it differently, with a wider base and more careful balance. The second tower was stronger than the first. Smart kid, Elon observed, still talking to Kimball but watching Tommy with admiration. Who's the smart kid? Kimball asked. My son, Elon said naturally, and felt Justine's sharp intake of breath beside him. Your son? Elon, you're scaring me. What son? When did you have another son? I'll explain everything later, Elon said, smiling as Tommy successfully completed his improved tower. Right now, I need to handle this SpaceX situation. But I'm going to handle it from here, through video calls and strategic thinking instead of panic and forced marches. Are you sure about this? Elon looked around his kitchen, which was becoming less like a showroom and more like a home every day. Tommy's artwork was magneted to the refrigerator. His sippy cup sat next to Elon's coffee mug. His laughter filled spaces that had been silent for too long. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, he said. After he hung up, he spent the next 3 hours in video conferences with his teams, with regulators, with investors. But he did it all from his kitchen table, where he could see Tommy playing and help Justine with lunch and answer questions about whether rockets could carry sandwiches to space. Something magical happened. Instead of the frantic, high-stress crisis management that usually took over his life, Elon found himself thinking more clearly, speaking more calmly. When Tommy offered him a block to add to his tower, Elon took it and kept talking. When Tommy's tower fell down, Elon helped him rebuild it while explaining orbital mechanics to his engineers. You sound different, Gwen observed during one call. Calmer, more centered. I'm learning to multitask better, Elon said, watching Tommy carefully balance blocks while he balanced regulatory requirements. By the end of the day, they had developed a comprehensive plan to address the FAA's concerns, not through confrontation or political pressure, but through genuine collaboration and systematic problem solving. It would take longer than Elon's usual approach, but it would be more sustainable and create better relationships for the future. "That was actually brilliant," Gwyn said in their final call. "I don't know why we didn't try this approach years ago." "Because I was too impatient to think long-term," Elon admitted. "Too focused on moving fast and breaking things instead of building something that would last." That evening, as they cooked dinner together with Tommy helping by stirring everything in sight, Justine brought up what they had all been thinking about. "You said my son took Kimball today," she observed. "I did," Elon said, lifting Tommy up so he could reach the counter safely. "Is that okay?" "More than okay," she said softly. "But it means we need to figure out what comes next. We can't keep living in this beautiful bubble forever." Tommy looked between them seriously. "Are we going home?" he asked. "Where do you think home is?" Elon asked him. Tommy considered this with the deep concentration he brought to all important questions. "Home is where family is," he said finally. "So anywhere we're all together is home." Out of the mouths of babes, Elon thought. Tommy had solved in one sentence what the adults had been struggling with for days. "What if," Elon said slowly, "we made anywhere we're together into home? What if we didn't have to choose between Boston and LA, but found a way to make both places work for our family?"
How?
Justine asked. "I've been thinking about it all day," Elon said. "While I was handling the SpaceX crisis from my kitchen table, I realized I can work from anywhere. Most of what I do can be done remotely, with occasional trips when I really need to be there in person." "And Tommy's treatments?" "Boston has the best pediatric immunology program in the country. LA has good doctors too, but Dr. Martinez is here. What if we split our time? A few months here for his treatments, a few months in California so he can know his cousins and you can be close to your work." Tommy clapped his hands excitedly. "Two homes, like astronauts who live on Earth and in space." "Exactly like that," Elon said, grinning at Tommy's enthusiasm. Justine looked thoughtful. "That could actually work," she said slowly. "If you really mean it about working remotely. If you can really be present, no matter where we are." "I mean it," Elon said firmly. "Today proved that I can be just as effective, maybe more effective, when I'm not running around the world putting out fires. When I can think clearly because I'm centered and calm and surrounded by people I love." "So we're really doing this?" Justine asked. "We're really going to try to build a life together? All of us?" Elon looked at Tommy, who was humming while he stirred pasta sauce, completely content in his belief that they were family. He looked at Justine, who was watching him with an expression of hope and trust he had never thought he would see again. "Yes," he said, "we're really doing this." 3 weeks later, they flew back to Los Angeles together. This time, Elon had cancelled his first-class seat and sat with Justine and Tommy and Coach. The flight attendants recognized him and offered upgrades, but he declined with a smile. "We're exactly where we want to be," he said, and meant it completely. Tommy handled the flight beautifully this time. His first immunoglobulin treatment with Dr. Martinez had gone perfectly, and his energy had returned in full force. He was fascinated by the window views, the clouds, the way the airplane moved through the sky. Elon found himself seeing flight through a 2-year-old's eyes again, not as a routine business necessity, but as an everyday miracle. "Look, Tommy," Elon said as they flew over the Grand Canyon. "See those red rocks? They're millions of years old, older than dinosaurs, older than anything." "Older than you, Daddy Elon?" Tommy asked with perfect 2-year-old logic. "Much older than me," Elon laughed while Justine covered her mouth to hide her smile. When they landed at LAX, Elon's usual car service was waiting, but he had made some changes. The black SUV now had a proper car seat installed, and the driver had been briefed that this trip would include stops at a toy store and a park, not just business meetings. "Where to, Mr. Musk?" the driver asked as they loaded their bags. "Home," Elon said, lifting Tommy into his car seat. "We're going home." Elon's Bel Air house looked different as they pulled up the long driveway. It was still modern and expensive, all glass and steel, perched on the hillside. But somehow it felt less like a museum and more like a place where people could actually live. "Big house," Tommy announced as they walked through the front door. "Is this our other home?" "It is now," Elon said, setting down their bags in the marble entryway. Over the next few hours, Tommy transformed the space in ways that no interior designer ever could. His toys appeared in the living room, making the expensive furniture seem less intimidating. His sippy cups migrated to the kitchen counter. His laughter echoed off the high ceilings and made them feel warmer somehow. But the real transformation happened when the rest of the family arrived. Griffin and Xavier, now 17, came over that evening for dinner. They were curious about Tommy, having heard only that Dad has been helping an old friend with her sick nephew. They weren't prepared for what they found. "Tommy, these are my other sons," Elon said as the teenagers walked into the kitchen. "Griffin and Xavier, this is Tommy." Tommy looked up at the tall teenagers with wide eyes. "Big brothers?" he asked hopefully. "I guess we are," Griffin said, kneeling down to Tommy's level. "Want to see something cool?" He pulled out his phone and showed Tommy a video of one of SpaceX's recent rocket launches. Tommy was immediately captivated, asking 1,000 questions about fire and noise and whether the astronauts were scared. "Not scared," Xavier explained patiently. "Excited. They're going on the biggest adventure ever." "Like when I went to the hospital and got my Brave stickers?" Tommy asked. "Exactly like that," Griffin said with a grin. Watching his older sons interact with Tommy, Elon felt something he had never experienced before. All his children together, in one place, taking care of each other. Griffin explaining rocket science in 2-year-old terms. Xavier drawing pictures of spaceships for Tommy to color. Tommy calling them his big brothers like it was the most natural thing in the world. Later that week, Kai, Saxon, and Damien, his triplets with his second wife, came to visit. They were 12 now, old enough to understand that family could be complicated, but still young enough to accept Tommy without question. "He looks like Dad," Saxon observed, watching Tommy build towers with blocks. "Same stubborn hair, same way of thinking through problems," Kai added, noticing how Tommy studied each block before placing it. "Are you and Justine getting married again?" Damien asked with a directness that only 12-year-olds possess. Elon and Justine exchanged glances across the kitchen where they were making lunch for 6 children and 2 adults. "We're taking it one day at a time," Justine said diplomatically. "But we're a family," Tommy announced from the living room, where he was showing the triplets how to make his rocket ship blocks. "Families live together and take care of each other." "Smart kid," Griffin said with approval. That evening, after the older children had gone home and Tommy was asleep, Elon and Justine sat on his deck, overlooking the city lights of Los Angeles. The same view he had looked at for years, but it felt different now, less lonely, more hopeful. "Your kids are wonderful," Justine said. "I was worried they might resent Tommy or me." "They're good people," Elon said proudly. "Better than I probably deserve. But they can see how happy Tommy makes me. How happy you make me." "Are you happy?" Elon thought about the question seriously. 3 weeks ago, he would have defined happiness as a successful rocket launch or a breakthrough in battery technology. Now, happiness was Tommy falling asleep in his arms during story time. It was Justine humming while she cooked breakfast. It was his sons teaching their new little brother about space exploration. "I'm happier than I've ever been," he said honestly. Even with all the uncertainty, even with Tommy's medical condition, even with trying to figure out how to balance everything, this feels right in a way nothing else ever has. What about Mars? Justine asked gently. Your mission to make humanity a spacefaring species. Are you giving up on that? Not giving up, Elon said, watching a plane move across the star-filled sky. Putting it in perspective, Mars will still be there in 10 years, in 20 years. But Tommy's childhood won't be. Your trust won't wait for me to get around to appreciating it. So what's the plan? Really? Elon pulled out his phone and showed her a calendar app he had been working on. I've been restructuring everything, he explained. Delegating more, traveling less, using technology to stay connected instead of being physically everywhere at once. The calendar showed blocks of time clearly marked. Tommy's treatment weeks, Boston, family time, no travel, school events, all kids, date nights with Justine. You actually scheduled date nights? She asked with amusement. I scheduled everything that matters, he said seriously. Work used to expand to fill all available time because I never set boundaries. Now I'm setting boundaries. Tommy's bedtime is at 8, so I'm men with work calls by 7:30. Weekends are family time unless there's a genuine emergency, and I've defined what constitutes a genuine emergency much more narrowly. What if your teams rebel? What if investors think you're not committed? Then they'll learn that a balanced leader makes better decisions than a burned-out one, Elon said. These past 3 weeks, working from Boston while taking care of Tommy, I solved problems more creatively than I have in years. Having something more important than work actually made me better at work. Justine curled up next to him on the outdoor couch, and for a moment they just sat together in comfortable silence, listening to the distant sounds of the city below. I have something to tell you, she said eventually. Good something or bad something? Good something, I think. I hope. She took a deep breath. I called Dr. Martinez yesterday. She wants to publish a case study about Tommy's treatment response. Apparently, his improvement has been unusually rapid and complete. That's wonderful news, Elon said, though he could tell there was more. She thinks part of the reason he's doing so well is psychological. Having a stable, loving family environment apparently boosts immune function in children with his condition. She said the difference in his test results from 3 weeks ago to now is remarkable. So what you're saying is, Elon said slowly, Tommy is healthier because he feels loved and secure. That's exactly what I'm saying. We're not just giving him a family, Elon. We're literally helping him heal. The magnitude of that hit Elon like a wave. They weren't just playing house or trying to recapture their lost youth. They were saving a child's life simply by loving him. There's something else, Justine continued. Dr. Martinez asked if we'd be willing to share our story. She thinks other families dealing with pediatric immune disorders could benefit from understanding how much family stability matters for recovery. You mean write about this? Tell people about us? Tell people about love, Justine corrected. About how sometimes the best medicine isn't something you get from a pharmacy. Elon imagined Tommy's story helping other families, other children who needed to know that healing was possible, that love really could make a difference. Yes, he said without hesitation. Absolutely yes. As they prepared to go inside, Elon's phone buzzed with a text from Griffin. Dad, Tommy asked if I could teach him about rocket engines tomorrow. Is that okay? Elon showed the message to Justine, who smiled. Looks like you're not the only one falling in love with him. No, Elon said, thinking about all his children gathered around Tommy today, patient with his questions, protective of his innocence, proud to call him their brother. I think this whole family is falling in love with the idea of being a real family again. Later that night, as he checked on Tommy one last time before bed, Elon found the little boy sleeping peacefully with his toy rocket clutched in one hand, and a picture Griffin had drawn of all the brothers together in the other. Looking at Tommy's peaceful face, Elon realized that he had spent years trying to reach the stars when everything he needed was right here on Earth. Sometimes the greatest journey was the one that brought you home. 6 months later, Elon stood in the backyard of a house they had bought together in Manhattan Beach. Not a mansion this time, not an architectural statement, just a regular family home, with a swing set and a sandbox and neighbor kids who came over to play. The kind of house where you could hear laughter from 3 blocks away. Tommy was running around the yard in a superhero cape that Justin had made for him, chasing bubbles and squealing with pure joy. His monthly treatments at Boston Children's Hospital were working perfectly. The constant infections had stopped, his energy had returned completely, and his laughter now filled every corner of their lives. More importantly, he had gained something that couldn't be measured in blood tests or medical charts. A family that would never let him face anything alone again. "Daddy Elon, look," Tommy shouted, pointing at a soap bubble that had drifted higher than the others. "It's going to space. Maybe it'll say hello to the astronauts on the space station." Elon called back, grinning at the title that Tommy had given him so naturally. It felt like he'd been earning it his whole life. Griffin and Xavier were visiting for the weekend, and they had fallen completely in love with their little brother. Right now, Griffin was patiently teaching Tommy how to throw a football, while Xavier worked on a robot that would blow bubbles automatically. Even little XA, now 4, had declared Tommy his best cousin ever, and insisted on wearing a matching superhero cape. "Ready for our guests?" Justine asked, appearing beside Elon with 2 cups of coffee and a smile that still made his heart skip beats. They were having people over today, not for a business meeting or a networking event, but because it was Sunday and the weather was perfect and they wanted to share their happiness with the people they loved. Normal family thing. The kind of Sunday gatherings Elon had always been too busy for before. "I have something for you first," Elon said, pulling a small wrapped box from his pocket. "Elon, we talked about this," Justine said, though she was smiling. "I don't need expensive gifts." "It's not expensive," he said, which wasn't exactly true, but wasn't the point either. "Open it." Inside the box was a simple silver locket. When Justine opened it, she found a picture of Tommy on one side, and on the other, an engraving that read, "For the woman who taught me that love is not a problem to be solved." Justine's eyes filled with tears as she put it on. "It's perfect. I want to ask you something," Elon said, watching Tommy successfully catch the football Griffin had thrown to him. "Not about marriage or forever or any of those big scary words. Just about today. Today, are we happy? Today, are we the family we hoped we could be?" Justin looked around their yard. Tommy was now showing XA how to make the biggest bubbles, both boys covered in soap suds and giggling uncontrollably. Griffin was helping Xavier adjust the robot's bubble-making mechanism with the kind of patient engineering that reminded her why she had fallen in love with their father. Neighbors were starting to arrive with their own children, and the yard was filling with the sound of families being families. "Today we're perfect," she said. "Then that's enough," Elon said, kissing her forehead gently. "We'll figure out tomorrow when it gets here." Dr. Martinez arrived with her own family, bringing the latest research on Tommy's condition and stories about other children who were thriving on similar treatment plans. Kimball came with his kids, still shaking his head in amazement at his brother's transformation, but obviously delighted by it. Even some of Elon's SpaceX and Tesla teams came, curious to meet the family that had somehow made their famously workaholic boss start leaving the office at reasonable hours. "He's different," Gwyn told Justine during a quiet moment. "Calmer, more focused, better at making big decisions because he's not stressed about everything all the time. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." "I'm not doing anything special," Justine said, watching Elon help Tommy and 3 other children build an elaborate sandcastle. I'm just loving him. We both are. That's more special than you think, Wynne said softly. As the afternoon wore on, Elon found himself exactly where he wanted to be, in the middle of organized chaos, with children running around his feet and adults he cared about scattered across his yard, talking and laughing and sharing food and stories. This was what life was supposed to look like, he realized. Not empty perfection, but beautiful mess filled with people who mattered. Tommy ran up to him, breathless and glowing with health and happiness. Daddy Elon, tell everyone about the rockets. Which part about rockets? Elon asked, lifting Tommy onto his shoulders so he could see over the crowd. The part about coming home. So Elon found himself telling a group of children and adults about rockets and space exploration, but not in the way he usually did. Not about technical specifications or business plans or the urgent need to make humanity a multiplanetary species. Instead, he talked about adventure and discovery and the courage it takes to explore new worlds. But you know what the most important thing about any journey is? He asked the group of children gathered around him. Even if you go all the way to Mars, even if you visit every planet and every star in the sky, the most important part is making sure you know the way home. And we know the way home? Tommy asked seriously, just like he had 6 months ago. Yes, Elon said, looking around at Justine laughing with Dr. Martinez, at Griffin teaching a neighbor's daughter how to code, at Xavier patiently fixing a broken toy for a crying toddler. We definitely know the way home. As the sun began to set and their guests started to leave, Tommy grew tired and cuddly in the way that only exhausted, happy children do. He climbed into Elon's lap and snuggled against his chest, still wearing his superhero cape, but ready for quiet time. Read me a story, he asked sleepily. What kind of story? About the rocket that went everywhere but always came back to his family. So Elon told him the story that had become their favorite bedtime tale, about a little rocket that was very curious and wanted to explore the whole universe. The rocket visited Mars and Jupiter and Saturn, saw nebulae and black holes and distant galaxies, but no matter how far it traveled or how many amazing things it discovered, it always returned to Earth because that's where its family was waiting. And they lived happily ever after? Tommy asked. The same question he asked every time. Yes, Elon said, meaning it more than he had ever meant anything in his life. They lived happily ever after. But this time, Tommy was already asleep before Elon finished the story. Completely safe and secure in the knowledge that he was loved, that he was healthy, that he was home. As Justine and Elon cleaned up the remnants of their party, paper plates and plastic cups and the wonderful debris of people having enjoyed themselves, they moved around each other with the easy rhythm of partners who had learned to work together again. Good day? Justine asked, loading the dishwasher. The best, Elon said, folding Tommy's superhero cape carefully and setting it on the counter for tomorrow's adventures. Any regrets? Any moments where you missed the old life? Elon thought about it honestly. He thought about the board meetings he used to attend, the crises he used to manage personally, the feeling of being indispensable to world-changing projects. Then he thought about Tommy falling asleep in his arms, trusting and safe. He thought about Griffin asking him for advice about college applications. He thought about Justine humming while she made coffee in the morning. None, he said simply. Not a single one. Later that night, after Tommy was tucked into his bed surrounded by pictures his new siblings had drawn for him, after Justine had fallen asleep with her head on Elon's shoulder, Elon lay awake for a few minutes thinking about the journey that had brought him here. A year ago he had been building rockets to escape Earth, convinced that the most important work happened in laboratories and boardrooms and launch facilities. Now he understood that the most important work happened in kitchens and backyards and hospital waiting rooms, in the small daily choices to show up and stay present and love the people right in front of you. Tommy stirred in the next room, making the soft sounds of a child dreaming good dreams. Through the baby monitor, Elon could hear him talking in his sleep. Family, rockets, home. Elon Musk, father, partner, dreamer, and finally completely human, smiled in the darkness and knew that he had found his way home at last. Sometimes the universe puts you exactly where you need to be, even at 30,000 feet. Sometimes the greatest adventure isn't reaching for the stars, but learning to be present for the small miracles happening right here on Earth. Sometimes the most important mission isn't saving humanity, but saving one family, one moment, one bedtime story at a time. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you discover that the love you thought you'd lost forever was just waiting for you to be brave enough to come home. What an incredible journey of love, family, and second chances. Sometimes the most important discoveries happen when we least expect them, even at 30,000 feet in the air. I hope this story touched your heart and reminded you that it's never too late to choose love over work, family over fame, and being present over being perfect. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I love hearing from viewers all around the world. If this story made you smile, cry, or believe in second chances, please hit that like button to help spread this message of hope and kindness to others who might need it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss these heartwarming stories that remind us what really matters in life. Speaking of amazing stories, there's another incredible tale waiting for you right now. Just click on the video appearing on your screen. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Thanks for being part of our community of kindness. Until next time, remember that sometimes the greatest adventures are the ones that bring us home.